The Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by Reaper Apparel Company. Reaper Apparel offers a casual line of superb fit, finish, and comfort. We design for those who refuse to die slowly and choose to live untamed. For those who aren't afraid to face the dark, for the ones that thrive in it, and for those who can appreciate life through a grim lens. That's Reaper Apparel Company. Go to the link in the description of this episode, use the promo code Mike Bono, and get 10% off. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by my own personal merch store, the Stupid Should Hurt merch store. I have hats, I have t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, water bottles, notebooks, you name it, I've got it. The description and the link for that will be in the description of this episode. Also, right now, if you use the promo code WELCOME, I will give you 5% off of your first purchase. That's the Stupid Should Hurt merch store. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by Tactical Brotherhood, all American-made apparel, which helps support the Second Amendment. You can also find all this in the description of this episode with the link, Tactical Brotherhood. Part of every proceed does go to helping veterans, as it is a very good cause. All American-made products made right here in Minnesota. Go and check them out. Use the promo code PATRIOT15 to get 15% off your purchase. Now, let's start the show. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast. This is, as always, your host, Mike Bono. I have a phenomenal episode for us today, but first and foremost, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by my own personal merch store. That's the Stupid Should Hurt merch store. I have hats, as you see here, t-shirts, sweatpants, you name it. I got coffee mugs. The link for that will be in the description of this episode. If you use the promo code WELCOME, I will give you 5% off of your first purchase. Once again, the Stupid Should Hurt merch store, promo code WELCOME. That being said, my guest today is the sports director for WFMJ in Youngstown. He's been there a number of years. We're going to talk about everything that he does. Balash joins the show. Dana, sorry about the last name. We just talked about this before we started.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, not a problem. So, as someone who has a degree in sports communications, I understand what you do. But for the new listeners out there and everything like that, so how did you get into sports and TV in general?
Well, Mike, I've been very fortunate. I grew up in the Youngstown area, so I have not had to leave home. I graduated from high school way back in the early 80s, went to Kent State for a year, got involved with television there, then transferred to Youngstown State, and actually started in radio here at WFMJ. It's a locally owned company. It's locally owned by a family, and was fortunate to get a part-time position as a board op overnight. That same year, I was able to do some high school football play-by-play on the radio. And then in 1990, the radio station was sold. So I must have made a good impression on the general manager at that time because he offered me a job in television as a general assignment news reporter. I did that. I also filled in for some sports in the early 90s and in 1990. Then in 1991, the weeknight sports position came open. And I went after that and was fortunate enough to get it. And then in 2000, I was named the sports director. So I still do the 6 and the 11. Kind of cut back on the 11 a little bit, but do the 6. And with social media and things like that, keep the websites updated and things like that. So I've been in the position. I'm very fortunate to grow up in the city that I grew up the station I grew up watching, so very, very fortunate to be in this position, and have been in it since 1990. And Mike, one of my goals was, when I first started, was to be the longest tenured sportscaster, at this television station. And we've had some very well-known names sit in the chair or stand in the same studio that I have, including Joe Castiglione, the current voice of the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah.
Greg Brown, one of the current voices of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Jack Corrigan, who does Colorado Rockies baseball, and Greg Brown. I think I mentioned Greg, or I'm sorry. And the final one is Chuck Tanner, the late manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Actually did sports at this television station in this same building that I'm in. So my goal was to be the longest tenured sports guy, on air. And that has soon turned into be the longest tenured sports anchor in the market. I'm in my 32nd year of doing sports on television, so that's something I'm very, very proud of.
Hey, that's phenomenal. Like I said, I went to school for what you do, essentially, at Bethany College. Got a degree in sports communication, was actually at Bethany the sports director there for the radio station. So I understand like the job title a little bit and what you're dealing with. And actually, my class was one of the classes that helped build the station that is now aired at WVBC in Bethany, and all the accolades that everyone's getting and all the airtime that they're getting with social media. And it's nice, I think, for what they're doing, having, colleges, they get recruits from everywhere for sports. I mean, not all their parents can make a game, a couple hour drive maybe if they're up for it. But, people are coming from states away, so it's nice to be able to get that back out there. So how did social media, when you kind of went through it, how did that help you guys, or did it hinder you at all with your station?
I wasn't a big fan of social media when it really became an evolution. But it's actually helped me. And what I mean by that is it's, you put things out, and I'm not a Facebook person, but I'm a Twitter person. And putting things out on Twitter, for instance, in this area, it's a big football area, high school football area. So if a coach isn't coming back, I'll put that out there. And the response has been great. And then, other breaking news. And Mike, what I learned in this a long time ago with social media is when you had a story prior to social media, you could sit on that story for the 6 o'clock news, 6 o'clock sports. I mean, you could actually sit on it and break that story at 6 o'clock. If I got a story at 2 p.m. back in the day, I could sit on that story and break it at 6 o'clock. And I learned the hard way that you can't do that anymore. When social media became part of what we do in our everyday life, I had a story and I tried to sit on it, and I looked on a website and it was already there. From that standpoint on, any story that I get in the middle of the day, I put it on social media, and that's the way the world is now. People want to know what's going on immediately. It's not like when we didn't have social media and you had to watch the 6 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news or whatever. I mean, people still watch the news, but I think, when they hear something on social media, they read about it, and then at 6 and 11 or whatever time newscasts are, then they want to see it. And I think that's the big change. That was a little difficult, for me, because I was the type of person where I like to dig for stories and I like to dig for that sort of thing. And now, when I get something, bam, it goes out on my Twitter page and social media on our station website. And then I get prepared to put the TV story together.
Yeah, see, that's kind of what, I think I'm a big Twitter guy myself. I use Twitter a lot, and you're right. I mean, I started a blog back in college, Sports Talk, and quickly grew it, to the over 8,000 viewers, and that's back in the early 2000s when social media really wasn't that big. If Facebook was around and everything like that, but you're right now. Like I'll make a post and it's a breaking news, and the comments I get were like, "Well, I heard about this at 2 a.m. on Twitter. I heard about this on Facebook. This had that." It's like, so you're not really breaking the news anymore. But like the most current one I did was the big Christian McCaffrey trade from Carolina to San Francisco, and it happened overnight. And when I woke up, that's the first thing I did was make a post, and people were like, "Yeah, you're late to the party, man. We were up last night, and we saw it last night on Twitter." So I get it can hinder, the breaking news stories and everything like that, but to the point where you still got just for that story for sake of argument, I still had to go and watch ESPN in the morning to see all the finer details of it and actually see what was going down and what transpired. But yeah, you're right. The social media makes it hard for the breaking news stories. But
well, I think that's true to the fact, but when it becomes local, and I think that's where people rely on us. The national stories, those national guys are going to break that, and that's their job. They have connections with agents and front office personnel and all that stuff, and that's their job. On a local front, that's kind of what I strive for. If there's a story that's happening, I'm certainly going to do my best to get it out when I can. In this business, as really you're never off. You may be away from the office, but you're still tweeting and doing this and doing that to make sure that that your followers know what's going on. Because once you gain their trust, now they expect it, and that's sometimes could be difficult.
Oh, absolutely. So, what did you major in college to be able to get to your career and start it?
Well, I majored in telecommunications. I mean, I was doing newspaper work when I was in high school for the local paper here. I was editor of my yearbook in high school, and that. So I always had a niche for journalism, and I was just thinking about it, including my high school days of being involved with journalism. I mean, it's been 40 years that I've been part of this. So I went to Kent State, which is a very well-known telecommunications school. And the only reason I transferred back to Youngstown State is because I actually started working, in radio here part-time, and I didn't want to give up that position. So I was fortunate, you have to be in the right place at the right time where, I was able to do high school football games and basketball games, on the radio here. The frequency was 1390 AM. And again, there was no social media back then. So you were able to do those games. I mean, I was doing football games Friday and Saturday. I was doing basketball games on Tuesday and Friday. I had, a sole sponsor of those games who sponsored us for the year. So we were up to doing like 31, 32 games. And that kind of, once you get into that flow of things, you're doing that. And then, I was in the right spot at the right time when radio was sold in 1990. Didn't know what was going to happen. Didn't know what I was going to do. And, showed some versatility in doing news and sports. And so I was a general assignment reporter, because my goal was to get into television. And how you get in, you take what's available. And it was a news reporter's job. I mean, I did news in the past in radio, but it was a lot different going to council meetings or going to cover, accidents or fires or whatever. So that was a little different. But again, I knew if I wanted to get into sports, I had to get that experience in television of going out, meeting people and doing that sort of thing, and you meet people. And, I'm old fashioned, Mike. Someone gives me their phone number. I have a Rolodex. I put it in the Rolodex. I mean, I'm old fashioned that way. I always want to save things, but I was fortunate enough where I was in news for a year and a half. Like I said earlier, I was able to kind of transition and help out the sports department when needed. And that was anchoring, the weekends or during the week. If someone was sick, I was able to kind of do that. And then when the position came open again, I was in the right spot at the right time and was able to get it, and I'm very, very fortunate. I mean, I never thought I would be in a position like I am, for 31 years of doing sports. In March will be 38 years with this company, and it's been a great run. And again, I get asked a lot now, well, when are you going to, you've been there a long time, when are you going to get out? And I haven't thought about that yet. I'm the oldest one on set, so to speak, with our other anchors and stuff like that. But, you'll know when the time is right. And you just continue to do. I still have the energy. I still have the desire. I still like to dig for stories. I try to teach young people this is the way you do it. And again, I think the biggest I don't want to call it a problem, but I think the biggest issue sometimes facing young people getting into this business out of colleges, and one of the questions that I ask them, either if it's for an internship or a job at, is think back on your collegiate career, your college career. How many professors that you had in the telecommunications or TV actually were in this business? And the percentage is very, very low.
Yeah.
So they're coming in here, and you're trying to teach them the way you were taught and the way you do things, and sometimes that can be difficult.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just thinking back to my professors. I don't think one of them actually physically worked in radio or TV, but they were teaching it to us and everything like that. I mean, and not to take anything away from them, because they did a phenomenal job and everything like that. But having that experience with actually working with somebody who works in the business, I think, in my just personal opinion, is way more valuable than anything you can get from a textbook.
Well, and you're right, Mike, and that's why internships, I think, are so valuable for young people to get the hands-on experience of coming in here, and seeing what someone does. Internships are so valuable, and just not in this business. I mean, if you want to become a lawyer, you're not going to trial your first day you become a lawyer. If you become a doctor or want to become a doctor, you're not going to surgery that first day. I mean, there's a process. And again, I think that's where, because what you learn in school, I have found out, is a little bit different than where, at a real so-called television station. And I think that's some of the issues that some of the young people are facing these days, is because, when they're in school, it's this way, and when they come to a job, it's completely different. And again, I take nothing away from the professors and teachers who teach this, but I think if there were more people who were in the business doing it, then certainly things would be, a lot better. And that could be in any industry. But it is a learning process for young people starting in this business.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I mean, I did internship at a local TV station. You might know it, WTOV 9 in Steubenville.
Yep, absolutely.
Did my internship there, worked with the sports director and Don Sloan and all them, and Rob Metzger. Worked there as a producer for a little bit too as well, part-time. Just kind of wasn't in the cards for me at the time. I did have a lot going on, and, it was part-time. And to say I regret leaving there to go to my job in sales, I don't, because it made me who I am today, and I wouldn't change that for the world. But there is still a little part of me that's like, maybe I should have just stuck it out with TOV9 and, still been working there with the sports guys. So I want to see this too as well, just how things have changed in a little bit from you in college in the 80s. So what type of classes did you have in the 80s? And then I'm going to tell you what I had in the 2000s.
The speech classes were the big thing. Obviously, news writing classes, the TCOM classes, even going back to high school. I mean, speech was just so important because, you speak every day, and just learning how to talk. And I know that sounds very, very, childish, but how to talk and how to breathe, that sort of thing. And again, it was the communications classes, it was the writing classes, and really it was, those all come together. You don't go take news classes or sports classes or weather classes. I mean, back then, that's all it was. It was just news writing. I mean, appearance-wise, how did you look? There were no classes for that, but, it was more just, can you communicate and can you write and can you talk? And, now with these classes they have these days, I mean, there's consultants out there for everything.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say that, public speaking was probably, I think, the most beneficial class I had at Bethany. But they had what they called the ComCore 4, I believe it was called, when I was at Bethany. So that means your entire 4 years there, you had to work at the radio station to to get experience with that. That was a class, basically, and the credit hours. You had to write for the paper for the school. You had to work for the TV station too, and then you had to have a film class too to be behind the camera too as well. So, that was one of the things that I enjoyed those core four classes. I was a little upset with my beat that I got when I was with the paper, the Tower News, the paper at Bethany, because the professor knew me. She knew I was a big sports guy. That's what I wanted to do, and she gave me the food on campus. I don't know how that, that translated. So, but it was a different experience, and I think it helped me in my writing, which is why I still keep up with my blog to this day. Because I had that sports mindset and wanting to write for that, and then trying to kind of mix the worlds together, writing like I would for sports, but it was about the dining halls and all the food that was offered on campus and everything like that. So I think that would be the biggest difference for me. Did you guys have anything like that, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, when I went to Kent State, I mean, they were doing a newscast a night, one newscast a night, and now I think that has changed. When I transferred to Youngstown State, they didn't even have TV, a TV class. It was all radio. So, that was the big difference. But, I always tell young people, and again, I've been fortunate, Mike. I've been to World Series, I've been to Super Bowls, I've been to World Championship boxing, I've been to, the BCS games when they were the BCS, the National College Football. I've been very, very fortunate in my career. And I tell young people all the time, and I ask them this question: what do you think the easiest part of my day is? And they look at me and, getting everything ready. No. Going out, covering a story. No. The easiest part, Mike, is going up and doing what we do.
Yeah.
And that's the easiest part. The toughest part, where you have to gain, confidence, where you have to gain, respect from the viewers, is what you do behind the scenes. And that's the most important thing we do every day. And I've been doing this for a long time. I learn something new every day, whether it's about technology, whether it's about people, whether it's about something in the world of sports. You don't want to be someone you're not. I was always taught you want to be yourself. And a lot of young kids come in and, men and women, and they want to be, Chris Berman, or they want to be, this person. And it's fake. And I could tell right away it's fake. I always tell people who start out in this business is, your first year, you're a sponge. You want to learn as much as you can, whether it's about people, whether it's about technology, how it's developing stories, how it's developing sources, and you have to gain credibility. And I think that's the key to all of this. You could come in and be the flashiest guy or young woman, but you have to earn that credibility. And, sometimes that's tough. And sometimes for young people, that's very difficult because, they were the main anchor on their college station and this and that. And then they come here and, they're low on the totem pole, so to speak. So I think that's the tough thing for young people is, you really have to learn and be a sponge. I always tell people, look, I've been doing this for a long time. Do I know everything about sports? Absolutely not. If there's something I don't know, I ask questions about it. And I think, once they hear it from someone who's been doing it this long, they're like, oh, okay, I don't have to know everything, and again, it's we get paid to talk about sports, and there's not many better jobs than that.
No, I'd say I have a close second in what I do now, being a comedian and everything like that. But I translated, a lot of what I did, with the sports communications and everything like that into being a comic and what I do now.
Sure.
And being a comedian. And I got to agree 150% because I get that question about being a comedian all the time. It's the easiest part about being a comedian. Well, what do you enjoy the most about being a comedian? And people think it's this glamorous, easy thing. No, I'm working 24/7, 365. I don't get a day off. I'm always writing. I'm always trying to, work new jokes into my act. But the best part of being a comedian is when I get to get on stage and show all the hard work that I've been putting in, and being on TV and radio and all that, I think has definitely helped for sure. Just with how I talk, when I breathe, when I need to pause, when and people were like, "You just seem so natural at it." I was like, "Well, I announced sports for 4 years in college and did it on radio and TV, and it just comes natural to me when I get on stage."
Well, there's a difference too, Mike, and again, I think there's a difference between being confident and being cocky, and you got to be confident. Your audience has to believe you. Again, it goes back to credibility. If you make like in our businesses, and again, no one's perfect. I mean, do we make mistakes? Absolutely. Do I make mistakes? Absolutely. But when you're believable and you're right on stories, everyone wants to break that top story. Everyone wants that story. I'd rather be second and accurate than first and wrong. So. Yeah. So sometimes, I think that's where credibility comes in. And you have to be willing to admit your mistakes. You got to be willing to say, hey, you know what, we blew it. You don't like to do that, but I think that shows you're human. And, if you watch a newscast, you have the news, which is all serious. You have the weather, which is the weather. Then you have sports, and sports should be the fun part of it. And that's what we try to do. That's what I try to do. Local sports in our area in Youngstown, I mean, we're between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. But local sports is our bread and butter. We don't ignore the Indians or the Guardians. We don't ignore the Browns, the Cavaliers, the Penguins, the Steelers, or the Pirates. We don't ignore them. But if we have a major local story, that's going to supersede what we do. And I guess, when you have a 6 o'clock newscast, what I try to do is, okay, that's our local newscast. I mean, we try to put local stuff in there. The 11 o'clock is still local, but, we're going to add the Guardians, we're going to add the Pirates, the Steelers and the Browns, and the Cavaliers and the Penguins and that sort of thing. But those are our regional stories. Now, if the Guardians name a new manager or Terry Francona steps down, yeah, that becomes our lead story. That probably goes into the news block. So, it's that's part of my responsibility. You kind of juggle things. Okay, what's important, what's not important, or, and again, you try to relay that to the young people and say, okay, just because, we have a local soccer team that's going to the playoffs for the first time, and the Guardians win a game, that local is the key. And I guess, again, going back to the old days, Mike, is, if you want to see local sports, you turn on your local TV. If you want to see national sports, then you turn on your ESPN, CNNs.
Yeah, I agree. Like, honestly, the only time right now, like, if I watch local news, if I get a chance for my schedule and everything like that, to watch local news, it's to see what's going on with the local sports teams. It's to hear, that my son goes to Philo middle school right now. The Philo high school actually had to win their game on Friday to make the playoffs, and that was a big thing. And tuning into the radio stations to listen to the game while I was doing some work to try to catch a little bit of it, and but I turning it on to see what was going to happen, because I moved to Zanesville in the Philo area where I'm at now 3 years ago. So I'm learning this, but they would have had a chance if the seating worked out to play my hometown Steubenville Big Red, you know what I mean, and play them, and it was going to be back in Steubenville, so I would have got a chance to go home a little bit, and and see everyone again in all the local sports. Didn't work out. Steubenville's obviously number one, and Philo got 15. They actually bumped up another spot because of a loss from another team, and those stories to me are that gets me excited, because these are, they're young kids, they're playing for something, they want to do something, and just, seeing how hard they work is phenomenal to see, even in this day and age.
Well, and again, our management here, is fantastic when it comes to high school football, because on a Friday night, Mike, we're covering 18 games.
Yeah.
Sometimes 19, and that's about 19 minutes of time we're taking. So, our management here understands the importance of high school football. We have 25 teams in our area in the playoffs, and where we are, we also cover a couple of counties in Pennsylvania. So we have their playoffs. But like I says, local sports is our bread and butter. And that's something that I'm very, very proud of what we do.
Oh, absolutely. We are running down near the end of the episode, but I got to get this in here, and
Sure.
And I got to know this, You've covered sports for a long time. What is your favorite game that you've ever covered, whether it's high school, college, or pros? Do you have a favorite that you've ever covered?
The best thing that I probably have covered, Mike, and again, I was at Ohio when Jim Tressel was the coach at Youngstown State, went to Ohio State. We went down there. Kelly Pavlik was a local boxer in our area who won the middleweight championship. And Kelly was a homegrown guy, and he fought in Las Vegas, for the world championship in Atlantic City. And, covering him was probably the thrill because he was a Youngstown guy, still is a Youngstown guy, but he took care of the local media. And I was very fortunate when he got on his run to travel with him and cover him to Las Vegas, to Atlantic City numerous times. And that was great. I've been to the World Series in 1995 when the Indians lost to the Braves in 6. I was in Miami when the Indians lost to the Marlins in 7. I was in Chicago and Cleveland when the Indians lost to the Cubs in 2016. So I don't know if it's me, but I've been bad luck for them. I guess the dream would be to see the Browns in the Super Bowl, to cover them in a Super Bowl. Don't know if I'll see that in my lifetime, but certainly, I was in the Super Bowl, it's, the game is secondary to the events. I was very fortunate to be in Arizona for Super Bowl 30 with the Steelers in Dallas and Super Bowl, the one that was in Detroit when Pittsburgh beat Seattle. And it's all, the game is secondary, and just being part of those events is something that, I'll never forget. I mean, the national championship games in Arizona with Ohio State and New Orleans, with Ohio State as well. Youngstown State being in the national championship game. I mean, one of the greatest plays I ever saw, Mike, was when Youngstown State was playing Eastern Washington. It was on a red field, and it was, YSU won on the final play of the game where the tight end pinned the ball against the defender's back. Yeah. You probably have seen that, but that was, that was a thrill. So again, very, very fortunate. But so I can't pinpoint one thing. There's been a lot of them.
I'm sure there was going to be a lot. I'm glad you mentioned Kelly Pavlik, though, too, as well. A big fan of our show here. He's actually been on the show, talked to him a lot. Just a great individual to talk to. And just to hear what he's doing for Youngstown and everything in that area, is phenomenal that he's still trying to give back to his hometown. Love Kelly Pavlik to death, and I'm glad he's was in that list of people that,
people ask me all the time, who's the one of the, who, out of all the pro athletes you've interviewed, who's been the best? And again, I'll say Kelly Pavlik because he knew who we were. He took care of us. We covered him when he was first starting out, then when he was on the national spotlight. I mean, he never forgot that. When he won the middleweight championship in Atlantic City, when he beat Jermaine Taylor, there was a big press conference set up and the Youngstown television stations were on the side. And he came to us first. And, they were kind of pushing him to go there. And he took care of us first. And that means a lot. And, to see him do so well, at that time. And it's hard to believe it's been, 15 years that in 2007 and 2008. But still keeps his roots here and is a great asset to this area.
Yeah, like I said, he's just a great person to talk to. I enjoyed the hell out of his time on my show here, and it's still, honestly, to this day, still one of the most listened to shows that I have. And he was one of the first big name guests that I got to interview on the show and everything like that. And it's still great to see that's happening. But like I said, we're running down near the end of the episode, and I'm running out of time here. But I got to know one more thing too as well. How do you balance the work-life balance with what you do?
It's tough. It's tough. I mean, when you work afternoon turn, and again, I've kind of changed things a little bit. I'm working more day, just doing the 6 o'clock, and I have a great staff that will do the 11. I had a health issue earlier this year, a couple of months ago, which put a scare into me. So I'm still not back at full strength, but it's a tough balance, and certainly those are things that you deal with, and you have to accept sometimes, and it is what it is. I mean, you have to work these days, and like I says, it's it's tough sometimes, but you do it and you adjust to it.
Absolutely. Because that's one of the big questions I get asked all the time. You travel everywhere doing comedy. How do you balance having a wife and a son and just your everyday life? I said it's not easy. Don't get. I'm not gonna. I make it look pretty easy, I guess, but it's another job in the job itself. So I get that, but like I said, we're running down Dana, I give every guest this opportunity. I'm going to give you about a minute. Anything you want to get out there? Anything you want to get to promote? The floor is yours, my man.
I appreciate the opportunity, Mike. Obviously, WFMJ TV is the NBC affiliate in Youngstown, Ohio, and it's a great place to work. Certainly, we're a sister station to WTOV, being in the NBC family, and we have a great staff here. Again, we're locally owned, and that's unheard of, in this industry. But that's nice. The owners know who we are, and we have a great management staff here who understand the importance of what we do and what our television station does. And for your listeners and viewers, our website is WFMJ.com.
Oh, absolutely. I will put all of that in the description of this episode so everyone can find these guys and check them out. It's going to be phenomenal. Anybody in the Youngstown area, I know I got a big following in the Youngstown area. Check them out if you don't already know it. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast. Again, Dana, thank you for joining. Really appreciated talking to you. As always, if you enjoyed the show, be a friend, tell a friend. If you didn't, tell them anyways. They might like it just because you didn't. That's going to do it for me, and I will see y'all next week. The Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by W Energy. Energy drinks made for gamers, streamers, and podcasters alike. For gamers, streamers, and podcasters alike. Go to the link in the description where you can find the best energy drinks out there. Less caffeine than a cup of coffee. Also, no jitters and no crash afterwards. Use the promo code Mike Bono and get yourself 10% off. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by my favorite sponsor of the show, and that is Shankit Golf. Golf apparel made for the everyday golfer. We might not go out and shoot a 6 under par. We're probably going to shoot a 6 over par, but this is going to give us the gear that's going to help us rock it on and off of the course. Go to the link in the bio, use the promo code Mike Bono, and get yourself 10% off there as well.